All right, so USC, what have you learned so far?
About
the program, about the school, about the tradition.
Yeah.
What has struck you so far?
I guess what I've learned at USC is just how many athletes on campus, how impressive they are outside of their athletic field or court. The student athletes on campus, I've been blown away with the vibrant personalities. Just them as total people has been really inspiring.
Where do you think that comes from? Is that recruiting the right people? Is it the environment once they get there?
I think it's probably a whole bunch of stuff. I think it's probably the way that our coaches on campus recruit. I also think that the academic standards at USC, there's a whole bunch of factors probably why. But first week on campus, I was blown away meeting players of other programs. And then I think that also had an effect on how we recruited, to be honest with you, as I look back and think about the way we ended up with our roster. Maybe first impressions with some of the other student athletes on campus had an effect on how we recruited as well.
Wow, that's interesting. So before you even knew that, what were some of the things that drew you to this job?
Yeah, I grew up in San Diego, and so, if you're growing up in San Diego, USC is really powerful, both academically and athletically, and then when you're growing up there, also socially. All those things, are a huge factor. And my first job out of college was working for the Clippers. They played at the LA Sports Arena, which is less than a mile away from USC's campus. So quite familiar for many, many years with a whole bunch of stuff that's gone on in the area.
How do you feel like, you talked about your NBA experience, and of course up at Golden State, and up around California, Northern California. How do you feel like your NBA experience has shaped you as a coach? And now we're going through a changing landscape in college basketball, now professionalizing it a little bit. How has it benefited you, you think?
Yeah, I think I look back at my professional experience, and in college now it's helped in so many ways. Number one, automatically you think about the travel. I've done the travel from Sacramento to Miami to play a game, and I know what that first game feels like. I know what the day of the game shoot-around feels like. I know how hard it is to go to sleep once you land on the first night of a road trip like that. So I think from a travel perspective, I have my own philosophy based on past things that have worked, past things that have not worked. We're not going to have any early morning shoot-arounds when we go west to east, because I've experienced that. I know what that's like. And then when you think about, the transfer portal, it's almost like professional free agency and players changing, and how do you fit them in quickly? And, to me, you think about, a player who's in his contract year with the NBA, and then here it might be a player who's got another year of eligibility, and how that plays into everything. So I know that from an old school perspective, you don't want to talk about that stuff, but that's where we are right now. And then you add in name, image, and likeness. So everything in a short amount of time continues to drift quicker and quicker to the way that the professional ranks are.
I mean, it probably feels like every player is on a one-year contract.
Well, they
at
are.
This point. Yeah, exactly. It feels like it because it's true.
Yeah, it is true. And so how you coach, how you deliver things, all those things become factors in today's coaching world.
So when you were constructing this roster, what was your plan? How'd you go about it? And did it fall in place like you had anticipated?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's when you're recruiting in today's landscape. I look back when I was at Nevada, and we were ahead of the portal before it was the portal, and so it was very little competition. I mean, there's no way in today's landscape that Cody and Caleb Martin would end up playing at a place like Nevada after being at NC State. Would not happen. That somebody would transfer down, so to speak, to a lower conference. That's not happening in today's landscape. But I do think when we looked at this roster and how it was going to be built, the first thing I did is I looked to see what did USC's women's basketball team do to have the success that they had last year. Oh, wow. They had a star, and then they got couple players from the Ivy League that played their role to a T. So we went out and we got 2 Ivy League transfers, which I've never done before. So, and then we also try to look and see where did these players that we're recruiting, who did they play for in the past? Were they coming from winning programs? Were they coming from coaches that we respected their X and O and game planning and scheme? All those things became huge factors. And we look back at Arkansas, what worked, what didn't work, and we tried to come up with a formula. And we also, the biggest, most important thing was in year 1, how do we get players that fit a culture?
Interesting. And that culture that you want to instill is what?
Energy, effort, and enthusiasm. I think those 3 E's are really important. We're not going to put a number of wins on year 1. We know where we're ranked preseason, which is not what we're used to. We're used to being ranked there in the country, not in a conference. So we understand the level of play in the Big Ten. We understand that USC's new to the Big Ten, and therefore that might have a little bit to do with like preseason rankings and where teams are going to be, predicted early in the year. But it's our job to change that narrative, and you do that by gaining respect of referees. Many of the referees have never reffed a USC game, certainly haven't reffed a game that I've coached, a lot of them. So we got to get respect from them on how hard we play and how competitive we are. We've got to gain respect of opposing coaches in the Big Ten. We've got to gain respect of opposing players in the Big Ten. And most importantly, we have to gain respect of our own fan base, our boosters, and our alumni.
I'm glad you brought up energy in that answer too, because it seems like that defines you. Energy, you bring energy to this interview, to the team. How important is that, and how important is that part of your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, I just look back at people that have coached me. I look back at people that I look up to. I look at people that I've worked for. All those type coaches that I wanted to be like all had great energy, and they had an incredible enthusiasm, incredible love for teaching. And I've been around like so many great coaches, from Chuck Daly to Doc Rivers to Mike Fratello to Hubie Brown. I've worked with Tom Thibodeau. I feel like I have experienced being around some of the greatest coaches in the game of basketball. And then I look at what I do on my free time, and it's how do I go spend 20 minutes with Dave Roberts with the Dodgers in batting practice, and is there any way for me to go meet Andy Reid and get 15 minutes of his time? So that's what I'm doing on my spare time to try to grow and learn. And I think the greatest way to learn is from coaches in other sports, because they're willing to share. Oftentimes people in your own sport feel like they got their own secret and they don't want to give out whatever they got going on. But a baseball manager's more than willing to share ideas on how to deal with the media. What do you do with team chemistry? What do you do when a team is struggling? So all those things are areas that coaches can always continue to improve and evolve in.
That's pretty cool. So for fans at USC that don't know you, or fans around the Big Ten, what is the criteria that has to be met for you to remove your shirt? What needs to happen?
The only way the shirt gets removed is permission pregame from my wife.
Okay.
So she's got and I think a lot of that has to do with, it's like a weigh-in for a boxer, and pregame, if it's a big game, she might tell me to get on the scale. And if it's right there around 144, I'm good to take the shirt off. If it's 147 or above, no way's the shirt coming off.
So you might have to check it. Hey, this big game, jump on
I got to
the
go on
scale.
a diet a little bit. Yeah, so I got to get on the treadmill a little bit more, and my pace on the treadmill's got to increase. But it only happens in big games.
Yeah.
And, probably USC is probably have to chill out a little bit, compared to Nevada and Arkansas.
The Southern Cal vibe. I don't know, though. Success in the NCAA tournament, national championship probably will help there.
And even if I'm warned not to take it off, sometimes a big win, it just happens.
Can't help it, right? Can't help it sometimes. Your living arrangement, your living situation, you've gone from an extreme Arkansas to now in L.A.
You think that's different, Fayetteville to L.A.?
Well, you tell me. How different is it?
Two different worlds,
Yeah.
For sure. But it's my third time living in L.A., my first job out of college, Clippers, and then I worked for the Lakers G League team. And my first job, I lived on 44th and Highland in Manhattan Beach. I'm now 6th and Highland in Manhattan Beach. Wow. So super cool. I feel like I'm living in the absolute best place in the world. I feel like I'm working at the best university in the United States, and nobody and no family is happier than the Musselman crew, I can tell you that.
That's awesome. I got one more for me. Can you tell me about the rivalry? UCLA, USC, not a Pac-12 rivalry, now it's a Big Ten rivalry. What does that mean to you?
Well, I haven't experienced it, you know what I mean? And so to me, it's always like, do I know what it's about? Yes. Growing up in San Diego, I've seen the rivalry and I've heard about it. But I've been on the outside of this rivalry. What I do know is Mick Cronin is super competitive. I also know that I'm super competitive. I know his teams play really hard, and historically our teams have played really hard. So whatever rivalry it's been, it's probably going to be that same, or maybe we can even take it up another level, because I know he's a fierce competitor, and one of the terms we're using with our team this year is we want to be sewer rats. So I'm sure the rivalry will continue in men's basketball, and I know it's a great rivalry in women's basketball and football, and it's been that way before I got to USC, and it's going to be there way after I'm gone at USC. So that's a rivalry that'll be there forever.